Welcome in, everybody. Today we're taking a deep dive into the world of the Science of Identity Foundation.
Yeah, we've got
You guys sent in a lot of stuff for this one.
a lot.
Legal documents, forum discussions, news articles, some stuff even from overseas.
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack, so...
It is fascinating, though.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, this group has flown under the radar for so long.
Right.
And there's accusations of everything, cult behavior,
Yeah.
political maneuvering, financial scandals.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And at the center of it all, you have this guy, Chris Butler, who goes by Siddheswara Paramahamsa
Right.
within the group.
That's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
Yeah.
And he's known for being incredibly reclusive.
Yeah.
He teaches this thing called the Science of Identity,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of controversy around him. So where do we even start with this? I guess, what is the Science of Identity?
Sure.
And how does that differ from other, Krishna-based philosophies?
Yeah. Well, Siv claims it's all about understanding your true identity as an eternal soul that's connected to Krishna.
Okay.
But what's interesting to me is that they place a lot of emphasis on Butler himself
Okay.
as the only person who can really interpret this truth.
So it's not just reading scriptures or...
Right. It goes beyond that.
Okay.
It's about accepting his teachings.
Oh, so no questioning.
Not really,
Yeah.
no. And I think that's where the cult accusations
Right.
start coming in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you mentioned earlier he's really reclusive, so he doesn't really interact with most members directly?
Not directly, no. He relies a lot on his senior disciples to
Okay.
spread his teachings,
Okay.
maintain order within the group.
And some of the sources were even calling them enforcers,
Yeah,
which is...
a strong word,
Yeah,
but it gives you an idea of the environment.
definitely. So speaking of things that are kind of controversial,
Right.
we have to talk about the Gabbard family.
Oh, yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard, who was a congresswoman, she ran for president.
Right. Her and her family have been involved with SIF for a long time,
Yeah.
and that's obviously raised some questions.
A lot of eyebrows
Yeah.
raised.
About the group's influence on their views.
Absolutely.
So what do we know about that connection?
Well, from what you've gathered, it looks like it goes back decades.
Wow.
Tulsi's father, Mike Gabbard, he's a pretty big deal in Hawaiian politics.
Right.
And he's been very outspoken against LGBTQ rights.
Yeah.
And he's actually publicly said that his stance comes from SIF's teachings.
Huh.
So there's a pretty direct link there.
Wow. Yeah. And there's even allegations that SIF members were actively donating to Tulsi's campaigns.
Right.
And they might have used their network to, get people out there to support her.
Mobilize the voters.
Right. And there are some sources saying that the family tried to downplay their ties to SIF during her presidential run.
Yeah, you can kind of see why they might have done that.
Right. It's not exactly the kind of publicity you want when you're running for president.
Definitely not. But it just adds another layer to this whole story.
It does. And
Huh.
it makes you think, what kind of political agenda might SIF be trying to push?
Right. That's the big question, isn't it? Is this just about personal beliefs, or is there something more going on?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the religious aspect, the political aspect, and then, of course, we have to talk about the financial stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are a lot of allegations about financial misdeeds
There are.
surrounding SIF and some of its key members,
Right.
money laundering, pyramid schemes, and then there's this company called QAnon.
Right.
It's all very murky.
It is a bit of a rabbit hole.
So let's try to break it down a little bit.
Okay.
A lot of these allegations seem to center around this guy, Alan Tippy.
Right. Ikarya Das, as
Uh-huh.
he's known within SIF.
Right,
Yeah, he's been in some legal trouble.
right.
And there's accusations that he was involved in various financial scams,
Okay.
some of them even connected to this QNet company.
So for people who aren't familiar with QNet, what is it?
Okay, so QNet is a multi-level marketing company, and it's been accused of running pyramid schemes in a bunch of different countries.
Which basically means you make money by recruiting new members?
Exactly, not by actually selling products.
Okay.
And the allegations here suggest that there's a connection between SIF Tibby and this QNet company.
So is there any evidence to back that up?
Well, there's a lot of conflicting information out there,
Okay.
but some former SIF members claim that Tibby had a very prominent role in the organization.
Even though he denies being a member.
Yeah, it's a bit suspicious.
It is. And on top of that, we found mentions of this company called Tie Leaf Productions.
Oh, yeah. The film company.
Right. They're linked to SIF, and apparently they had some legal issues of their own.
That's right.
One of their investors pulled out of a project because of all the bad press surrounding SIF.
And that bad press stemmed from allegations of drug-related activities
Oh, wow.
and their ties to SIF.
Okay. So we're seeing potential financial issues
Yeah.
with individuals, with businesses,
Hmm?
potentially even with the organization itself.
It definitely paints a picture that needs to be looked at more closely.
It does.
Huh.
So I guess the big question now is, what's it actually like
Right.
to be a member of SIF?
Yeah.
Are people aware of these financial dealings? Are they being exploited? And that's where I think we need to look at the personal accounts that
Yeah.
you've provided.
From former members.
Right, because they offer a glimpse
Yeah.
into what life is really like inside this group.
Exactly. And it's,
And from what I've seen, it's not pretty.
no, it's not.
It's a far cry from the peaceful image that a lot of these spiritual groups try to project.
Definitely.
So let's dive into those accounts and see what they reveal.
Let's do it.
So these personal accounts are really eye-opening. I mean, they are not holding back
No, they're not.
when it comes to Chris Butler's behavior. I mean,
Right.
they're describing him as eccentric, which I think is putting it mildly. There's
Yeah.
a lot of talk about him being abusive toward his followers.
And it's not just like one or two people saying this.
No, it's a recurring theme.
Right, like a pattern.
Yeah, and they're describing instances of public humiliation.
Yeah, like over the smallest things.
Yeah, and then there's this whole thing about his lifestyle.
Right, the lavish lifestyle.
So like this huge contrast
Right.
between how he lives and how everyone else in SIF is expected to live.
Yeah, like these followers are supposed to be living frugally, dedicating their time and money to Seth.
Yeah, giving everything they have, basically.
Yeah, right. And then you have Butler living in luxury.
Yeah, some people mentioned that he demanded purified air.
Oh.
He would complain about the food.
Living conditions.
Right,
Even though he had servants.
right. Multiple servants.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
It is. It's pretty jarring to read about.
Definitely. And it makes you wonder.
Yeah, like, is there any hypocrisy going on here?
Right. And are these followers being taken advantage of?
I mean, it definitely raises some red flags.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you have Rama Ranson,
Right.
who attended that SIF school in the Philippines.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
She describes it as this really strict, isolated environment. The kids there were enduring hardship.
Constant scrutiny.
We're definitely going to have to unpack that whole school situation.
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other episode.
But let's get back to Butler's behavior for a second.
Okay.
We even found descriptions of confession sessions and like these weird punishments.
Right, like making people wear bags on their heads.
Yeah.
That's strange.
It's beyond strange. I can't even imagine the psychological impact.
Especially on young people.
Right. People who are vulnerable.
Exactly. Just seems like a way to control people.
Yeah. And not in a healthy way.
Definitely not.
It makes you question their motives, right?
Like, is this really about spiritual growth?
Or is it something else?
Right, something more sinister.
So what do you think, what stands out to you the most about these accounts?
It seems like the common thread here is control.
Control.
Yeah, like Chris Butler having this immense power over his followers.
And it creates this environment where you can't really question anything.
Right. You can't dissent.
And if you do, there are consequences.
You're punished or ostracized.
Yeah, you're out, basically.
Which brings us to the structure of SIF itself.
Right. The organization.
It's fascinating because it's so hierarchical.
Yeah, with Butler at the top.
The big boss man.
And he rarely interacts with most members directly.
Which is interesting because it reinforces that power imbalance.
Absolutely.
And it creates this atmosphere of fear and obedience.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone's walking on eggshells.
Right. They don't want to upset the higher-ups.
Exactly. And there's this whole culture of like unquestioning loyalty toward Butler.
Right. Like you can't question his teachings.
No, because that's seen as a sign of weakness.
Lack of faith.
Yeah, so it's like a built-in barrier to critical thinking.
Which makes it harder for people to see what might be wrong.
And speaking of control, let's talk about their recruitment methods.
Okay.
There's not a ton of detail in the sources,
Right.
but some people mention something called love bombing.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic.
That's like they shower these potential recruits with attention and affection, making them feel special.
Right. And it creates this really strong sense of belonging.
Which can be very appealing to people who are looking for that.
Yeah, especially people who are maybe feeling lost or alone.
Right, they're vulnerable.
And it can make it hard to see the red flags.
Definitely. Once you're in that bubble, it's tough to break free.
Okay, so you're feeling all this love and acceptance, and then what happens?
Then the control mechanisms start to kick in.
Right.
And there's evidence that SIF uses propaganda and information control to maintain this positive image.
So they're controlling what people see and hear.
Exactly. They want to suppress any negative information about Butler or the organization.
And they're really good at managing their public perception.
Yeah, they're very strategic about it.
We even saw stuff about them trying to control the online narrative.
Oh, yeah, scrubbing negative content from the internet.
Yeah.
It's like they're trying to erase any criticism.
And that's pretty disturbing,
Yeah, it is.
especially when you consider the potential use of psychological techniques.
Oh, yeah, like NLP.
Yeah.
Other forms of persuasion.
To influence people's thoughts and behaviors,
Right. And these techniques can be really powerful.
especially in a closed system like CEF.
Absolutely.
So we've talked a lot about these financial misdeeds connected to CEF
Yeah.
and some of its key figures.
It's a lot to unpack.
These are serious accusations.
No, absolutely.
We need to be careful here.
Yeah, we need to look at the evidence.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess a good place to start is with QN,
Right, the multi-level marketing
and
company.
one that's been accused of running pyramid schemes,
Exactly.
which, as we know, are
Not good.
not good at all.
People end up losing a lot of money.
Yeah, and some sources are alleging a direct link between CIF and QN.
Mm-hmm. And they specifically point to Alan Tibby.
Aksharya Das.
Yeah, that's the guy.
Right. So Tibby is...
That's a tricky one.
He's a complicated character in all this.
Yeah, he denies being an official CIF member.
Right.
But you have all these former members.
Yeah.
Placing him at the center of everything, even running that school in the Philippines.
Right. And then you have those money laundering allegations.
Oh, yeah.
Some sources are saying that money was being funneled through QNet
Potentially.
to hide its origin.
Right.
To avoid the authorities.
So what does that mean for CIF members?
Well, it raises the question of whether they were knowingly involved.
Right. Were they just trying to support something they thought was legitimate?
Exactly. They might not have known what was really going on.
And we even saw reports of members encouraging their families and friends to invest in QNet.
Oh, wow.
So potentially pulling more people into this mess.
Yeah. And that's where it gets really concerning.
Because it suggests that CIF might have been exploiting its own members.
Yeah, for financial gain.
Using that trust and influence to
make money.
Yeah.
And potentially putting their members in a really bad spot financially.
It's a classic cult tactic, right?
Oh, yeah. You see this a lot.
Blur the lines between spiritual devotion and financial investment.
Right. And ultimately, it's the people at the top who benefit. And it's not just happening here in the U.S.
Or really?
Yeah, the sources you gave me there are accounts from CIF members in Poland who are saying the same things.
Pressure to donate financial exploitation?
Threats when they tried to leave.
It's the same story, just in a different country.
Exactly. So it seems like these issues...
They're not isolated.
No.
This could be a systemic problem within CIF.
Yeah, and it's happening all over the world.
Wow.
Makes you wonder what's at the root of this.
Right. What is it about CIF that creates this environment?
Well, I don't know if we can answer that definitively.
No.
But it seems like this combination of a charismatic leader...
Right.
a hierarchical structure,
Mm-hmm.
and a belief system that discourages critical thinking.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it creates this perfect storm for manipulation and exploitation.
And the fact that this is happening within a spiritual organization
Right. It's supposed to be about helping people.
makes it even worse.
Because people are looking for guidance. They're seeking meaning.
Right. They're vulnerable.
Exactly.
So it's a reminder to be careful.
Yeah.
Even with groups that seem spiritual or wholesome.
Always question things.
Yeah. Do your research.
Trust your gut.
Don't be afraid to walk away.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
Chris Butler's behavior, the Gabbard family, the financial stuff, the personal accounts.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it's raised a lot of questions about power.
Belief.
The potential for harm within spiritual organizations.
It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
No, they're not. So what's the takeaway here?
I think it's about being informed,
Oh.
being skeptical.
Don't just take things at face value.
Exactly. Question everything. Dig deeper. Challenge authority.
Especially when it comes to faith and belief.
Absolutely.
That's great advice. I think that's a good place to wrap things up.
Yeah.
We've only scratched the surface of this group, but hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of CIF,
Their history.
the allegations against them.
And the potential risks involved.
And if you're interested in learning more,
Please do your own research.
keep asking questions.
Keep digging.
There's always more to uncover.
Absolutely.
That's all for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.